family betrayal, lawsuits, and the fight for love. The wedding that almost never happened.
Subscribe, hit the bell, and drop a comment. It's easy for you and means the world to me. Watch till the end, and don't forget to check out the other stories on this channel. Let's dive in.
The morning of our wedding, I was a bundle of nerves and excitement. The sun was shining through the windows of the hotel suite, casting a golden glow across the room. I stood in front of the mirror, the delicate lace of my dress sweeping across the floor as I made final adjustments to my veil. My hands trembled slightly, but I couldn't suppress the smile that kept tugging at my lips. Daniel was downstairs, waiting for me, though we had promised not to see each other until I walked down the aisle. Even after everything that had happened, I couldn't quite believe I was here, about to marry the man I loved, someone who had stood by me through every obstacle, every betrayal. But as I looked at myself in the mirror, I couldn't shake the knot in my stomach. It wasn't just the usual wedding jitters. It was the weight of everything that had led to this day, everything I had to fight for. My family's disapproval, the legal battles, the endless whispers behind my back. I had never felt more disconnected from them, and yet, they were still there, lingering in the background like shadows. I hadn't spoken to my mother in weeks, not since the fallout over the wedding funds. She hadn't agreed to support me financially, not after the huge fight we had over the money. That $30,000 was supposed to be mine, but my parents had tried to take it and give it to my irresponsible younger sister, Chloe. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the fact that they always made Chloe the priority. They always saw her as the one who needed saving, the one who deserved more. And it wasn't just this time. It was a pattern that went back years. I should have known it wouldn't be easy. My family had always treated me like the afterthought. But still, the sting of it hit harder than I could have imagined. I took a deep breath, trying to shake the anxious thoughts. It was supposed to be a celebration, right? The day I got to marry the man of my dreams, to start fresh. The weight of the past shouldn't have been allowed to ruin it. But even as I thought that, I couldn't ignore the creeping feeling in the pit of my stomach. I knew Chloe hadn't given up. I knew my mother hadn't either. And I couldn't shake the sense that they were still scheming, still looking for ways to undermine me. A knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. My best friend Isabel popped her head in, her face lit up with excitement. "Are you ready?" she asked, her eyes sparkling. I nodded, forcing a smile.
"As ready as I'll ever be."
She stepped inside, her eyes scanning me up and down. "You look beautiful," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "You and Daniel are going to be so happy together."
"I know it."
"Thank you," I said quietly, feeling a lump form in my throat. Isabel was one of the few people who truly had my back, who had been there through every fight, every tear. She had helped me fight for my happiness when no one else would. I didn't know what I would have done without her. "Let's get you to him," Isabel said, her voice firm but kind. "You've been waiting for this day for so long, and it's finally here." With a final deep breath, I nodded. Isabel helped me adjust my veil one last time, and together we walked down the hallway to where Daniel was waiting. The hallway seemed so long, but it felt like the world had shrunk to just the two of us. As I reached the door to the ceremony hall, I paused. This was it. I was about to take the first step into the next chapter of my life. I was about to stand beside Daniel, my rock, my partner. And for a moment, I allowed myself to believe it was going to be perfect. But just as I was about to turn the corner, a text message buzzed on my phone. I glanced down at it, my heart skipping a beat. It was from an unknown number. Asterisk, "Don't think this wedding is the end of it. You'll regret everything soon enough." Asterisk. I felt a chill run down my spine. My hand shook as I stared at the message. Who could this be? Why was someone trying to ruin my happiness? I quickly shut off my phone, my heart pounding. "Everything okay?" Isabel asked, sensing my hesitation. I nodded, my voice tight. "Yeah, just nerves." But inside, my mind was racing. The wedding was supposed to be my fresh start. It was supposed to be my day. Yet even now, with the ceremony about to begin, the shadows of my past were trying to crawl into the light. I couldn't let it ruin this moment. But as I stepped into the aisle, looking ahead at Daniel, standing at the altar with a soft, loving smile, I promised myself one thing. I wasn't going to let them win. Not today. Not ever. The ceremony went off without a hitch. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to relax. Daniel and I exchanged vows beneath the soft, golden light of the late afternoon, surrounded by people who loved and supported us. It was beautiful. It was everything I had dreamed of. But even as we said, "I do," something inside me couldn't let go of the creeping doubt. The text message was still fresh in my mind, echoing through my thoughts. The calm of the ceremony didn't last long. As we moved into the reception, surrounded by friends and family, I felt the heavy weight of the past pressing down on me again. My eyes darted around the room, searching. My mother hadn't shown up. She hadn't even sent a card. Neither had Chloe. But I could feel their absence like a hole in the room, a dark space where their expectations, their manipulation, and their anger used to be. I had been prepared for them not to show, but the reality of it still stung. Isabel noticed my distracted state almost immediately. She leaned over to me as we took our seats at the head table. "You okay?" she asked quietly, her eyes scanning the room, too. She knew me better than anyone. I forced a smile, taking a sip of my drink. "Just tired," I lied.
Long day.
She didn't buy it, but she let it go for now.
Well, you're allowed to be, she said, her voice light. You've had one hell of a ride getting here.
I nodded, grateful for her support, but I couldn't let go of the unease gnawing at me. I kept expecting someone to walk in, my mother, my sister, someone who would disrupt the fragile peace I had finally built. And then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. I looked down, and my stomach dropped. The same number. Asterisk, you think you're safe, but this is just the beginning. Your perfect day will unravel soon enough. Asterisk. I felt a cold chill creep up my spine. What the hell was going on? Who was doing this, and why? I glanced around the room again, but nothing seemed out of place. People were laughing, dancing, and chatting as if nothing had happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting, just beneath the surface. I excused myself from the table, slipping into the quiet hallway outside the reception hall. I needed to breathe, to clear my head. I stepped into a nearby restroom and locked the door behind me, sinking against the sink. My mind was racing, but I couldn't make sense of any of it. Why were they doing this? Why couldn't they just let me have one day of peace? Just as I started to gather my thoughts, the door swung open. I froze, heart racing, before realizing it was only Isabel, her face set with concern. "Sid, what's going on?" she asked softly, stepping into the restroom and closing the door behind her. "I don't know," I said, my voice trembling. "Someone's messing with me. The text messages, the threats. It's like they're not done yet." She raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "Your mom."
Chloe.
I nodded slowly. "It's got to be them. It feels like something they would do." Isabel didn't respond right away. She just stepped closer and put a hand on my shoulder. "Listen to me, okay? You fought too hard to let them take this from you. You're married now. You've got a future with Daniel, and nothing can take that away unless you let it." I took a deep breath, nodding, but her words didn't completely erase the anxiety that was eating at me. I had fought for years to get to this point, to finally build a life outside of the toxic grip my family had on me. But every time I thought I could let go, they found new ways to pull me back in. Before I could say anything else, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Asterisk, if you're not careful, you'll lose everything. Even him. Asterisk. I felt my blood run cold. What did they mean? What could they possibly have on Daniel? He was the one person I knew I could count on. He was the one who always believed in me, always supported me. What could they say to tear us apart? I stared at the message for a long moment before looking up at Isabel. I think they're trying to ruin everything. They're trying to tear Daniel and me apart. Don't let them, she said firmly, standing up straight. You've got to stay strong. For him. For you. For this marriage. I nodded, wiping away the tears that had started to form in my eyes. I won't let them win. Not today. Not ever. The next few days after the wedding were a whirlwind. I had married Daniel, but the lingering tension with my family gnawed at me. The wedding had been everything I could have hoped for, but the creeping doubt still lingered, gnawing at the edges of my happiness. The messages had stopped, but my instincts told me that wasn't the end. Daniel and I were settling into our new life together. Our apartment, though small, felt like our sanctuary. I focused on our future, trying to keep my mind on what mattered. I poured my energy into decorating, into building our life, into making this feel like a fresh start. But no matter how hard I tried, the shadows of the past seemed to follow me. One Thursday morning, as I was getting ready for work, I received a call from an unknown number. My heart skipped. Could it be them again? I hesitated for a moment before answering. Sydney Harper, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Sydney, it's Aunt Marcia, came the voice on the other end, soft but strained. I need to talk to you. Can we meet? A chill ran down my spine. Aunt Marcia wasn't someone I had talked to often, but she was one of the few relatives who wasn't blindly loyal to my mother and sister. The fact that she was calling me now made me uneasy. Of course, I said, trying to mask the tension in my voice. What's going on?
I'll explain when I see you, she said, then gave me an address.
Meet me at the cafe in an hour. It's important. I hung up, my mind racing. What could Aunt Marcia want? And why hadn't she told me over the phone? I quickly finished getting dressed, trying to push away the nagging sense of dread. When I arrived at the cafe, Aunt Marcia was already waiting for me at a small table by the window. She looked nervous, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee cup. Hi, I said, sitting down across from her. What's going on? You sounded worried. She looked around the cafe, then leaned in closer. I didn't want to bring this up over the phone, but I think you should know something. My heart skipped again. What is it? Is everything okay? Aunt Marcia hesitated before speaking. It's about your sister and your mom. They've been spreading rumors, Sydney. They're telling people that your marriage isn't real, that you married Daniel for his money, that you're hiding something. I felt a sharp sting in my chest. What? Why would they say that? She shook her head, frustration in her eyes. I don't know, but they're going around telling anyone who will listen. They've even gone as far as telling people you're using Daniel to cover up some financial mess. It's a lie, Sydney. I know it is, but they're making it sound convincing. I couldn't breathe for a moment. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about Daniel, too. And it felt like my mother and Chloe were trying to sabotage everything we had built. Have you heard from them? Or have they said anything to you? I asked, my voice shaking. Aunt Marcia sighed deeply. They've been keeping their distance from me. Your mom's not happy with you, Sydney. She hasn't forgiven you for not following her rules, for not letting her control your life. And Chloe, well, you know how she is. I nodded. Of course I knew how Chloe was. Her jealousy had always been the driving force behind our fractured relationship. I'm so sorry, Sydney, Aunt Marcia continued, her voice soft. But I felt like you needed to know. I don't want them ruining your life, especially now that you've started fresh with Daniel. My head was spinning. I tried to process the words, but they didn't quite make sense. Why would they go this far? Why would they spread these malicious lies? I don't know how to stop them, I whispered. They've done so much already. And now this. How can I stop them from ruining everything? Aunt Marcia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You don't have to do this alone, Sydney. You have people who love you, people who know the truth. I nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. I couldn't let them get away with this. I had already fought so hard to be free of their grip, but it seemed like they weren't ready to let go. As I left the cafe, the heaviness in my chest grew. I thought of Daniel, of how much he had stood by me, how much he believed in me. And now, to think that my own family was trying to tear us apart with lies. I couldn't let them win. I needed to confront this head-on. I needed to show them that no matter how much they tried to break me, I was stronger than they knew. And maybe, just maybe, I had finally learned how to protect myself. The days after my meeting with Aunt Marcia were a blur. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that every step I took was somehow being scrutinized. My phone buzzed constantly, filled with messages from concerned friends, but my family's shadow still loomed large. They were relentless, and for the first time in my life, I was beginning to wonder if they were right. Was I truly so naive to think I could escape their grasp? Daniel could see the change in me. I'd become withdrawn, tense. The smile I once wore now felt more like a mask. I tried to hide it, but he knew. He always knew. One evening, as we were sitting on the couch, sipping wine and watching a show, Daniel finally spoke up. "You've been quiet," he said, his voice calm but laced with concern. "What's going on, Sydney?" I looked at him, and for the first time, I felt a wave of guilt. Guilt that I hadn't been fully honest with him, that I had let my family's drama bleed into our lives. He didn't deserve any of this. "They're spreading lies," I said, my voice tight. "About me, about us. They're trying to ruin everything we've built." He frowned, his grip on his glass tightening. "What kind of lies?" "They're telling people that I married you for your money," I whispered. "That I've been hiding some financial mess, using you to cover it up. And that's not all. They're saying we're faking the whole thing, that our marriage is a sham." His jaw clenched. "And who's behind this?" "My mom and Chloe," I replied, unable to hold back the bitterness in my voice. "They're telling anyone who will listen, trying to make me look like I've been using you." Daniel didn't speak for a long moment. I could see the fire burning in his eyes, and I knew, deep down, he was furious. He wasn't the type to let this go. "Let's make it stop, Sydney," he said finally, his voice low but determined. "We need to confront them. Head on." I swallowed hard. The thought of facing my mother and sister, of confronting them with their lies, was terrifying. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly. "I mean we can't let them get away with it," Daniel said, his eyes never leaving mine. "We'll expose their lies. We'll fight back in a way that shows them they can't just walk all over us." The idea terrified me. The thought of opening up the ugly truth about my family, about the deep-seated resentment and manipulation, made my stomach churn. But at the same time, I couldn't let them continue. I couldn't let them define me. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for that," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "What if they turn everything around on me? What if they convince everyone that I'm the one in the wrong?" "You're not the one in the wrong, Sydney," Daniel said firmly. "And you don't have to do this alone. We'll face them together. I'm with you, no matter what." His words were a lifeline. I realized, for the first time in a long while, that I wasn't fighting this battle alone. I had someone in my corner who would stand by me through whatever came next. But that didn't mean I was ready for what was coming. The next day, I made the call. My mother answered, her voice too calm, too sweet.
Sydney, she said, as if nothing had happened. How are you?
I gritted my teeth. We need to talk, Mom. About the lies you've been spreading. About me. About Daniel.
This has gone too far.
There was a pause on the other end. I don't know what you're talking about, Sydney, she said, her tone cooling.
We've done nothing but support you.
Support me? I echoed, my voice rising. Is that what you call telling people I married Daniel for his money? Is that how you support me? Her silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, she spoke, her voice tight with frustration. You don't understand, Sydney. You've changed. You've always been so independent, but now you've turned your back on the family. We're just trying to look out for you.
No, Mom, I said, the words coming out with a clarity I hadn't expected.
You've been manipulating me my whole life, and now you're trying to ruin my marriage. You've pushed me to this point, and I'm done pretending it's okay. I could hear her breathing, her silence speaking volumes. And then, before she could respond, I hung up. My heart was racing. I'd never stood up to her like that. I didn't know if I'd made a mistake or if I was finally doing the right thing. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her destroy what I had with Daniel. I turned to face Daniel, who was watching me with an unreadable expression. That was the first step, I said, my voice shaking.
He smiled at me, a look of pride in his eyes.
You did great, Sid.
We're in this together.
And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I might be able to take control of my life again. The days after my confrontation with my mother felt like I was walking on a tightrope. There was a strange kind of silence hanging between me and my family, one that spoke volumes. They hadn't reached out, and I hadn't expected them to. The lies they told me were too deeply rooted, too ingrained in their way of thinking, for them to admit to anything now. But I knew they wouldn't let it go for long. They never did. Meanwhile, Daniel and I spent our days focusing on what truly mattered, our life together. We were in the middle of decorating our apartment, making it our own. A new couch, a few art prints for the walls, and shelves filled with our books and little trinkets. It felt right. It felt like home. But I couldn't completely escape the tension. Every time my phone buzzed, I feared it was another call from a family member, trying to stir the pot. My mom, my sister. One of them would inevitably try to pull me back into their chaos. I had to be prepared for it. That preparation came sooner than I expected. It was late afternoon when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw Chloe's name flashing in bold letters. My stomach dropped. She'd never reached out to me directly before, and I had a feeling this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. I hesitated, but then I answered. Sydney, she said, her voice too sweet, too practiced. I need to talk to you. I tried to keep my voice steady, despite the unease bubbling in my chest.
What's going on, Chloe? I've been hearing things, she began, her tone dripping with false concern.
About what you said to Mom. About the way you're treating her. I think you're misunderstanding everything. I clenched my jaw. Misunderstanding? You and Mom have been lying about me, Chloe. About Daniel and me. About everything. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought she might hang up, but then she spoke again, her voice lower this time. You don't know the whole story, Sid, she said, almost sounding defeated. You don't know what it's like for Mom. She's just trying to protect me. She's always had to. I don't think you get it. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Protect you?
From what?
From the truth? From the fact that you've been manipulating everyone around you for years? That you've used Mom's love and my guilt to get whatever you want? I could hear her breathing on the other end, and for a moment, I thought she might break down, but then she snapped back. You're just jealous. You always have been. Mom's always loved me more, and she's always made sure I had everything I needed. You think you're the one who deserves it, but you don't. I've always been the one who needed her, and you've always been so selfish." Her words hit like a slap to the face. I could feel the weight of them pressing down on my chest, and for a second, I felt the old familiar guilt creeping in. Was she right? Had I always been selfish? Had I really turned my back on my family? But then I remembered everything. How my mother had always put Chloe first, how they'd lied and manipulated me, how they'd tried to tear down my marriage. The guilt faded, replaced by something stronger, anger.
"That's enough, Chloe," I said, my voice firm.
"I'm done with your lies, and I'm done letting you tear me apart. You don't get to use me anymore. You don't get to make me feel bad for wanting something of my own." She was silent for a long moment. I thought she might cry, but she didn't. Instead, her voice came through, cold and final. "I'm not going to apologize, Sydney. I'm not the one who needs to change. You are." And with that, she hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand, my mind racing. The conversation had been everything I expected and nothing I wanted. It was clear now more than ever, Chloe wasn't going to change. My mother wasn't going to change. And as much as it hurt, I had to accept that. Daniel came into the living room just as I set the phone down. He could see the look on my face, the frustration and pain mixed with a sense of finality. "How'd it go?" he asked gently, sitting beside me. I shook my head, exhaling sharply. She tried to make me feel like I was the one in the wrong, like everything that's happened is my fault. He placed his hand on mine, offering silent support. "You know it's not true, right? You know this is just part of their manipulation." I nodded, but the sting of Chloe's words lingered. I wanted to let go of the guilt, to just move on and live the life Daniel and I were building, but it was hard. My family had been a part of me for so long, and even if I was done with them, it didn't mean the hurt magically disappeared. "You're right," I said quietly, squeezing his hand. "I can't keep letting them control me. I can't keep letting them make me feel guilty for living my life." Daniel kissed the top of my head, holding me close. "You've already come so far, Sid. You're stronger than you think. And I'm here for you. Always." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. The months that followed Chloe's call were filled with both calm and quiet tension. It wasn't easy letting go of the family I had once hoped would understand me, but it was necessary. Every day, I reminded myself that family wasn't defined by blood alone, it was defined by love, respect, and support. And the people who mattered were those who truly supported me. Daniel and I settled into our routine. Our home was small, but it was filled with laughter, love, and the kind of peace I hadn't known I needed. We spent weekends putting together furniture, cooking dinner together, and talking about the future. We made decisions about our careers, our finances, and our goals. Everything we did was a step forward, a way to build a future of our own making. As the weeks passed, I thought about Chloe and my parents less and less. It wasn't that I had forgotten the hurt, but I had learned to distance myself from it. I had learned that the path to happiness didn't involve keeping toxic people in your life for the sake of family. It meant building a life that aligned with my values, not the expectations others placed on me. But the final piece of closure I needed came unexpectedly. One afternoon, I received a text from Aunt Marcia, my mother's sister. The message was short, but it stopped me in my tracks. Asterisk, "I'm sorry for everything. Your mom has been blind to what's been happening, but I see it now. I've been too afraid to speak up, but I won't stay silent anymore. If you ever need to talk, I'm here." Asterisk. I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of disbelief and relief. I hadn't expected an apology from anyone in my family, especially not from Aunt Marcia. She'd always been the quiet one, the one who stayed out of the conflict. And yet, here she was, reaching out. I didn't know what to make of it at first. It wasn't going to undo everything, but it was a step, a real step, toward something different, toward healing. I sat down with Daniel that evening and told him about the message. His response was simple, but it resonated deeply. People can change, Sid. It's not always about the past, it's about what happens next. If you're open to it, maybe this is the beginning of something new. But only if you're ready. I thought about that all night. Could I ever be ready to let my guard down again? Could I forgive them for everything that had happened? The next day, I texted Aunt Marcia back. I thanked her for her message and told her that I was open to talking, but I needed time. I didn't know what that conversation would look like, but I knew that I wasn't willing to go back to the way things were. My family would have to prove they were worthy of a second chance, just as I had learned to prove to myself that I was worthy of the life I was building. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, things began to shift. Chloe's wedding came and went, a lavish affair that no one in the family really enjoyed. The gossip was relentless, and the cracks in their facades started to show. I heard from a few relatives that Chloe's extravagance was met with whispers behind her back. My parents, meanwhile, had taken out a huge loan to cover the costs, and it became clear to everyone that they were living beyond their means just to maintain a picture of perfection. As the summer rolled in, Daniel and I took a trip to the beach, just the two of us. We spent our days soaking in the sun, eating too much seafood, and enjoying the kind of peace I had fought so hard to find. Our conversations were filled with dreams about the future, starting a family, traveling the world, and maybe one day moving to a house with a garden. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. When we returned, there was a message waiting for me. It was from Chloe. "I want to apologize," it read. "I've been thinking about everything, and I know I hurt you. I was wrong. You didn't deserve that." I stared at the screen, my heart heavy with emotion. It wasn't the first time Chloe had apologized, but this time felt different. This time, I could feel the sincerity in her words. And while I wasn't ready to fully forgive her, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a new chapter. The apology didn't change everything overnight. It didn't erase the pain, the betrayal, or the years of manipulation. But it did give me a sense of closure. It allowed me to finally close that chapter of my life and move forward with a sense of peace I hadn't known I could have. As the months passed, I took things one step at a time. I saw Aunt Marcia a few times, and though my relationship with her was tentative, it felt good to have someone in the family who understood and supported me. Chloe and I didn't talk much, but I could see the change in her. Slowly, she was learning, and I was learning too. Forgiveness was not a gift I owed her, it was something I needed for myself. With Daniel by my side, I knew I had everything I needed to move forward. We had built a life together, brick by brick, and it was ours. Our future was bright, and it was ours to shape. As for my parents, they continued down the path they had chosen, and while I had no idea what the future would hold for them, I was no longer part of their story. I had finally broken free. And in the end, I realized that the greatest victory wasn't in proving anyone wrong, it was in finally finding my own peace.